it's funny because I'm in process of writing my book, and now I'm going through like old journals and old poems and stuff, and I'm like, wow, it's so clear, and I wasn't getting the attention that I needed from my parents, and can't fault them anymore. I'm an adult, but I wasn't getting the love and support that I needed at that time, and so it just festered in anger and rebellion and being the bad preacher's kid, But it was just so much anger and so much just animosity, but I still loved my parents. I still wanted to please my parents. So I had the people pleasing, but I wanted to piss them off at the same time. People pleasing, can't do this. People like, yeah. So it's like the back and forth in this. So imagine,
Yeah.
how that emotionally, just the turmoil that's going on. That was still inside of me when it went into my 20s.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people from around the world that are watching us, they say, yeah, we know where Canada is, in British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And we have this big city in British Columbia called Vancouver. Well, we are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or for our European friends, 800 kilometers. And I call it paradise here in northern British Columbia. Lots of nature, lots of lakes, lots of timber, lots of forest, and lots of friends of nature. Black bears, grizzly sometimes not so friendly. Then we have caribou, we have deer, we have foxes, you name it, we have it all here. And so I call it paradise. Today we have a very, very special guest. Her name is Alicia Farricielli. And so, Alicia, welcome to the show. And let me introduce Alicia. With a 20-year multifaceted career in marketing, public relations, and entrepreneurship, now shines as a certified life and health coach, specializing in initiatives, healing, and personal empowerment. And then some of the background of Alicia has been Alicia's journey from overcoming a difficult childhood to becoming a transformational coach is one of filled with profound personal experiences and deep insight raised in strict emotional demanding environments. She faced significant challenges that shaped her understanding of self-worth and resilience. She will share her background with us and let us know what she is doing today. So start with Alicia. Tell us where you're located and where you are from originally, your education, but brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I'm located in the Tampa Bay area of Florida in the United States, another paradise. We have beautiful, beautiful weather, lots of good nature here as well too. A little bit different than Canada, but like I said, another paradise.
How much
I
snow
was
have you
born in.
got?
Oh, we have got none, but northern Florida got some snow this year for the first time in many, many years.
They said,
It's
oh
been
my
cold.
God. Yeah, okay.
Yes, we don't
Sorry,
know
I
what to do.
interrupted you. Go a bit
Oh,
further.
you're all good. Yeah, I grew up in I would say I traveled, moved around when I was young. I'm originally from the Huntsville, Alabama area, which you could probably tell from people who are in the United States, tell from my accent, from that. But yeah, I grew up in a very super, super conservative, religious kind of hellfire, damnation, fear-based religion. My dad was a preacher of this particular religious.
Ooh.
So I was definitely a preacher's daughter. Went through all of the craziness with that. But yeah, so I was brought into such almost. I was brought in. I think I call from my mother's womb in. I was brought in with fear inside of me. So everything was just the world was like a dangerous place in certain ways. It could get you in trouble, and if you didn't do the right things, you're going to this fiery pit of hell. And so it created my personality to have to be a very perfectionist. Criticism was very hard for me because I was so scared I was going to be wrong, which was punishment. And so that really shaped my childhood. I was very timid, very shy. I never thought, I mean, when I was a young kid, I probably never thought I'd be on podcast speaking in front of, millions of people all the time and doing, public speaking and stuff too.
Did
But
you have
that was
siblings?
not, I do. I have two younger brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I love my brothers. They are amazing, amazing parents, amazing, you know, fathers, meeting spouses. Absolutely, yeah.
I interrupt
They're
you
they're
there. So start again there until I interrupt you. So as you grew up, okay?
Yeah. So as I kind of grew up, it's very shy and timid
Yes.
because of this fear based. But that was
Yeah.
not my who I authentically naturally was. I think I was a very loving, very shy child because of the fear, but also I could blossom more when I came out of that fear. And I see that now in my adulthood ways. So that really shaped a lot of what I'm doing today. It shaped a lot of things that I went through with my, businesses, through jobs, through my entire life was really shaped by this fear-based mentality that was subconsciously still inside of me. Although I'd come very far from the same belief system, but I was just that it's subconscious fear was still really, really, really deep inside of me until a few years ago, and I started to heal from that.
What I'm hearing is experiences that I had. And so I dealt with some of the experiences that I had coincidental, actually, as we do from time to time. Males are not the easiest one in those areas where we needed counseling in my relationship with my wife before we got married. We've been together now 40 or 42 years. And
Oh,
so
congratulations.
well, thank you. And so, still deeply in love, obviously. So, but, we had some challenges. And then the counselor said during the meeting to both of us that as we were dealing with the issues, he's saying at some point, I'd like to have a talk to John about the inner child. I never
Mm,
even heard of that. And
yeah.
so he explained then what it was, the little boy still living inside of me. By then I was already more than 50 years old, and a lot of that stemmed from a difficult upbringing during the war years in northeastern Holland, blah blah blah. And I'd never quite resolved all of that. So I got counseling for that, very emotional, but the did amazing things for me resolving that issue. But still, so and I know you make references to that as well. How critical it is, especially for males, to seek counseling, and because we have to be strong, that we don't have weaknesses, or and all of that. Yeah, 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 and we'll talk about that as well. Anyway, I thought I'd just put that into the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't realize the things that impacted our child. Like we still have our little inner children are always inside of us, and we don't realize that. We think because we're adults, we can't do childish things, and what happened as a child, we just forget about it. No, it take plays completely into our adult years, and we don't see that until we actually start to get across bumps. Like we keep hitting our head against brick walls. We keep having the same issues and problems going on. We never feel good about ourselves. Multiple different reasons why that the inner child starts to act, has not healed. The things that it brings into our adult life is so detrimental, and life doesn't have to be like that.
No.
It can be very joyful and playful, but we have to start healing our inner child.
So as you went through your youth with the challenges that you had, tell us about what did you do then as you became a young adult, go to schooling and started to find direction in your life as to what should that be, and how did that process grow to the point that what I always say for me is, who am I? Took me a long time to sort that out. And then the other one is to be at peace with who I am.
Mhm.
And so take us through the challenges that you had, obviously young adulthood, and then making a direction as to what were you going to do with the rest of your life and why.
So I'm gonna go back a little bit further than that. I'm gonna go back
Okay.
to when I was probably 14 or 15.
Okay.
I had so much anger inside of me because I was not able to be who I wanted to be. It's funny because I'm in process of writing my book, and now I'm going through like old journals and old poems and stuff. And I'm like, wow, it's so clear. And I wasn't getting the attention that I needed from my parents. And can't fault them anymore. I'm an adult, but I wasn't getting the love and support that I needed at that time. And so it just festered in anger and rebellion and being the bad preacher's kid, but it was just so much anger and so much just animosity, and but I still loved my parents. I still wanted to please my parents. So I had the people pleasing, but I wanted to piss them off at the same time. People pleasing, can't do this. People like, yeah. So it's like the back and forthness. So imagine,
Yeah.
how that emotionally, just the turmoil that's going on. That was still inside of me when I went into my 20s. I got married and had children very young. I'm divorced very young too by the time I was 30. And still through my 20s, I look back and I'm like, all it was trying to please my parents, particularly my father, but trying to please them and trying to make them happy instead of trying to build a life with my family. It was, well, I got to make sure what are they going to think about this? What are they going to think about this? And so that all still the fear is still based inside of me. It was still everything's fear based. There's punishments for every single thing that you do if you don't get it right. And so I get into my 30s to get divorced, which is absolutely, I don't recommend divorce for people, but it was the best thing for me. It made me be able to open up and truly kind of release some of that away from there, because my father disowned me, I think for the second time then, literally disowned me. Um, and so we didn't have a relationship. We didn't talk for probably, I think, 1.5, 2 years at all, because I'd got divorced because it went against his religious thought
You
patterns or
can't do
whatever.
that. Yeah.
I can't do that. That was really, really bad.
Yeah.
So that was gonna put me in that fiery pit of hell.
How many
So
children do you have?
I have
Li-
two. Yes.
and what are they?
Two.
Give us their names as well, and how old are they? If you feel comfortable with that.
I have a son, Skylar. He is 26. Yeah, he lives in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Um, and so we've had kind of a strange relationship due to probably a lot of stuff for my inner child stuff, but we're in a good relationship now. My
That's
daughter, she's 23. Her name is Kylie. She's in Nashville, Tennessee, and we are super close. She's like my little best friend.
yeah.
So super, 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 so proud of both of them. Yeah. So, but yeah, as I was in my 20s, that was all I did. And so I wanted to start businesses, but then I would start them, and then it would be, I didn't really know what I was doing. So then I'd went into the corporate world. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I can be powerful. I can be a leader. I can, like, everybody's gonna like love who I am. And so it's still a lot of the people pleasing that was associated by this. Now keep in mind, I haven't even heard about the inner child, had no idea what it was, had no idea I even had any wounds, had no idea I had trauma that I needed to take care of, because everything was just fine. That's just the way life was. And so again, after I get divorced, I realized something's, yeah, my parents are not quite right. They kind of lied to me. So I started to decompress some of the religious background. I wasn't participating in the religion, but I started to kind of decompress some things and started to find my own little path. And it really started with getting a divorce, honestly, as bad as that is. Not as bad as it is, like, it was as hard as that is to be able to do what I did. Yeah, to go through that for my parents. That was the best thing I did. And so as I got in, then I became a single mother, and all the trauma that comes, that leads, and that's not even wounds or trauma that comes along with that, because you're relying. I mean, I had two. I mean, their father was not very. He was not really emotionally there, financially there, but it wasn't. I was pretty much on my own, raising these two children by myself. With my help of family parents. I'm not saying I did it on my own. I did have a good support system around me at the time.
How old
But
were the
being a single
kids?
mom
How
was,
old were the kids then? They're now 26 and 23.
they were, I think, 9 and 12 or something like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
along those lines. I'd have to go back. I'd have to, like, put the calculator. They were young. They were into their almost
yeah,
preteen age.
yeah.
And it was very hard on them for that purpose of it. So that's why I say, like, as hard as it was for everyone, it was the best thing for me at the time. So as I get into that, and I'm raising these two kids pretty much by myself, financially, a little bit of help, but that's about it. All the things that come back, and I'm like, all the stigmatisms for being a single mother. My parents were looking at me like I was worthless because I was a single mother. The shame and the guilt that came in from all of that. From what you get told from society, you're a single mom, oh, the poor single mother women. If you're a single mom out there listening, or a single dad out there listening, my heart goes to you, and you are so strong, and you're capable and amazing. I just want to throw that out there and let listeners know that that is probably the hardest job that you'll ever do. And it is, you're doing a good job. Keep it up. Doing the best job you can do, keep it up.
That's me.
But going through all of that really started to build resilience in me, though. And so I would stumble a little bit, then I'd go back up. And so I would go through jobs, go through businesses, and still I couldn't figure out what was going on. Why do I hate my life? Why am I so miserable? And so about I got to my son was out of the house. My daughter was still in the house. She was probably 15, 16 years old. I had met my current husband now, who was amazing. And we were dating and living in the same house. And it was such turmoil. It was just emotionally draining all the time. Had an event business. I was working 80 hours a week, had no profitability, hoping clients were going to pay me on time so I could fork out another 10 grand the next month. So it's a financial strain, the financial stress of all that, all the emotional stress, still being having to raise my daughter by, pretty much by myself. She's a teenager. Teenage girls are very difficult to. I was one. I get it. They're very emotional. They're very difficult. They're learning to process their emotions, learning to process the world, and they're living in a very tough time to do that. But once I got through, but I hit a point to where I think I was like 35, 36. I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And so literally sat on the floor crying, and I was like, God, I'm done. Either tell me it's okay for me to be done with my life, or tell me it's gonna get better. Obviously, I'm here. So
Yeah.
it got, yeah. And he's like, so I say he, she, source, whatever you want to call it, like that divine being came into my life and started to show me different ways that my life was much better. Things started to open up for me a little bit better because I've started to be able to receive. I was like at the point I'm like, okay, I'm gonna receive it in. Like you just show me what needs to happen and receive this in. So I knew quitting, going into real estate. That was amazing at the time when I did that. And then at the back of my head, I was like, I always wanted to do business coaching. I always
So
wanted to teach people how
where
to.
were you located then, Elisa?
I was in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I was living in Nashville. And so as I was doing this, I was like, I want to do this. But at the point, I think that when I had my major breakthrough, I called it hit the rock bottom portion, I was in Nashville. Then I started doing some health work along the way. So I got up every day and I would spend time in the morning, and I developed this more little 15, 20-minute morning routine, which I say pretty much contribute to a lot of my growth. And I still contribute. Now I spend like an hour to an hour and a half in the morning is my favorite part. But as I was kind of starting the growth process, I wanted to start helping other people. And I would so
So,
I started working for my
just interrupting you for a second. You
yeah.
indicate for 10 to 15 minutes every morning you started doing what? And then you extended to an hour, hour and a half. But
Yeah.
what exactly were you doing?
I was journaling, I was meditating, praying, I was reading, doing a lot of
Did
motivational
you go
reading.
back to religion then, in a way?
I
Or
did go back to religion at the time, yes. I call religion more Christianity based, but it was still more of a connecting portion, not a fear based,
right,
but the
as you
fear
had
that I
experienced in the past, you know.
but I was still breaking through that. I was still deconditioning, decomposing myself from all the past belief systems of fear that were inside of me. And I know this because I was going through my past journals. I'm like, wow. So it was almost like a cry to God, like I'm not worthy. Cry out that I'm not worthy enough. I'm not worthy for this. Help me find, help me find my worth. And so that was more of the journaling portion of it. As opposed to today is like I have this worthiness to me. I have these things. I'm more gratitude. The gratitude was more, I'm not worthy of this. Thank you for giving something I'm not worthy of. Now it's more of like, I'm worthy of it. And I'm so appreciative that I have this wonderful experience and
So,
lessons that came.
so are your parents still alive, and are they still in a relationship with you?
No. Well, my mother and I are very close. They're both alive. They're still married. They're still functioning, doing just fine. Healthy wise. My mother and I have very close. My father and I, once I got remarried to my current husband, who's, like I said, the one I should have married. um, he has been. My dad decided to disown me for the third or fourth time, and so ties are done. So unfortunately, it is what it is. That's just his own fear base and stuff too. But it's also allowed me to start to heal myself and to heal, and allows a lot of my mother to start healing a lot of her stuff. She is just seeing the growth that she's taken over in the past 2 or 3 years has been tremendous too. And so that's been able to, for us to grow together and to become much closer than we've ever been with it.
And obviously, you have a good relationship with your brothers,
Oh yes,
and
yeah,
and so it's unfortunate that, and I'm not anti-religion. I'm agnostic, but I'm I'm not anti, but the it's unfortunate that that part of belief, whatever it may be, is so
yep,
dominant in somebody's life that it affects everything around them simply because there is a dogma, whatever it may be, that
yeah.
is this, it must be like that, and there is no compromise. There is no, that's the way it must be.
Yeah, that's what exactly what it is, and it's very, very sad, and it's taken a long time for me to come to. I don't call myself a Christian anymore. Some people be like, "Oh no," I do have I do have a very deep respect for. I believe religious masters have come out there with that teach people take what these teachings are from these I call ascended masters coming in and teaching these things, and they take it and they out of context to be able to control and to make it to what they want it to be, when all it is talking about is to love each other, to
Right.
practice love. And so I think if I was actually a religion, I would say it's just love. Like, let's just love people. Let's just love people where they are. Let's love them the way they are. Let's just love. That's simple it. That's it. If we don't love people, then we're not getting anywhere.
I was born in Holland in 1940, so I'm 84 years young, and so Holland. I don't know if you're familiar with Holland. Holland tends to be quite religious, actually, but also very liberal at the other hand. And the interesting part about Holland, in one way, is just adding to it. So I was born in the northern part of Holland, which predominantly is Protestant leaning
Okay.
religions. The south of Holland, predominantly Catholic,
Okay.
and saying, why is that, John? Well, the reason is that over time, if you did a very quick view of Holland, of Europe, how the borders all changed over the last 300, 400 years, then they own part of the different countries. Other countries did. So France did, Spain did, Morocco did for a period, and on and on and on of Holland. And most of the ones that invaded Holland were Catholic-based countries,
Yeah.
like Spain is, and France to a certain extent. And then how come that Northern Holland is then Protestant, which was more or less from Eastern, Western or Germany based, and Scandinavian based religions, if you wish, is that because Holland is a delta. The major rivers coming out of Central Europe go to the center of Holland,
Yeah.
and in those years, the 1500s, you couldn't get across the rivers. It's as simple as that. So, so the
Yeah.
invasion stopped there. But then talking about the religious part, my mom was Christian Reformed or Protestant leaning, but I was never, even not when I was young, actively involved in it. So, and I now consider myself, if the issue of religion comes up, I don't talk too much about religion
Yeah.
and politics. I do about politics now because of this fellow, I forget his name now, that you have there. Is it Musk? That is the president? No, anyway, tongue in cheek.
There's a lot of confusion going on in the US. And I'm not gonna talk because I will say something that will, yeah.
And so will I.
It's a very
So
interesting time to be alive.
yeah.
Put it
so
that way.
Alyssa, so what I consider myself is that I have no explanation for what happens after. I have no explanation for why is things that they are. Why that's why I consider myself agnostic. I feel the same as you do. I have respect for everybody. I love the ones that can be loved, and so not based on any particular dogma of any sort,
Right.
but what is on the foundation more than anything is respect. And then I do all the other fundamentals, right? Attitude, passion, work ethic. I work hard and then try to do the right things and blah blah blah. So that then being said, I just wanted to get your story a bit further here. Is that because of all this difficult experience that even now still, as I listen to you, still is part of you in a way that gave you experiences that you can share if you have the courage to do that, and obviously you do, I believe I do, with others, because in a lot of cases people are not doing that, but this is not uncommon. In fact, to the contrary. And so that gave you that experience to share with others and recognize it. So all the challenges that you had in the past became the foundation of who you are today.
Absolutely. And it fuels me up, and it's my passion and my I think my life purpose is to let others know that they can live a different way. They don't have to live with the fear and the shame. They don't have to live with all the things that were brought onto them. And it doesn't have to be religion. It can be multiple other things that are brought into. They have permission to be able to question. That's what I think the biggest thing. If I could allow people to have the mental freedom to be able to question things for themselves and to have the curiosity of maybe there's something different out there, and maybe what I've been told and taught and maybe my past experiences don't align up with my true identity of who I am. And to give them the permission for it to be okay. Because if someone had given me the permission in my 20s and 30s to say, it's okay that if you don't believe the same way as your family or your friends or the people that, your associate, whatever the world's telling you, it's okay if you don't believe that. Actually, it's probably a good thing because you're going to start to open up and your mind's going to work a little differently. I didn't have that permission. So if those people have that permission from even one person to be able to be like, it's okay if I'm different. I don't have to follow the pack. I can get out of this little box. It's totally okay. It doesn't make me right or wrong, and it doesn't make me a bad person.
So it took me a long time to get where you are, probably into my 60s. And so where in your case, in midlife, in your mid 30s, in that area where you got to reconcile who you were and what are you going to do and how can you be helpful to others, and then the other part about it that I'm finding a lot of things that similarities with you. So let me tell you just a little bit about me. As I already indicated, I was born in northeastern Holland. And northeastern Holland is the north part. Eastern part is within 10 or 15 minutes from the German border. My
Okay.
parents were married in 1938. They were in love, and so my dad had a job, worked at a lumber company, and they had rented a house. He was an accounting individual, so they were in love and very quickly had two children, a boy and a girl, and so then what happened is in 1938, 39, what happened is a dictator in Germany called Adolf Hitler decided to take over Poland, which he did, and then decided that he should also take over Europe, Western Europe in
Mhm.
particular. So my dad then, this happy little family that was there so deeply in love, my dad was drafted into the Dutch army in 1940, April of 1940. And so the last they heard from him when he was seen at the bombing of Rotterdam, where the German dictator decided this was not, they didn't surrender quick enough. They took this beautiful city, Rotterdam, and bombed the center of it. It killed thousands of people. And so for 5 years, they would not know if my dad survived the bombing of Rotterdam. And so my mom, by herself, they had to go through the next 5 years of war. What then happened in May of 1945, the Germans invaded with the Blitzkrieg Holland and had it under occupation for the next 5 years. And so the our family, the first thing that I remembered, I was born November the 1st, 1940. And I still remember from the time I was 3.5 years old. And what I remember is bombers overhead, hundreds of them, 300, 400 bombers overhead bombing the German war factories in all of Germany, but particular in the northwestern point, close to the North Sea, Bremen, Kiel, Wilhelmshaven, Hamburg, and on in those cities. And we would go in the evenings, in particular, my mom would take us outside on a flat roof that we had, not to look at it, but she felt safer outside than inside. And in the distance, we would see the cities burning, the sky be red. And so, and there were daytime, nighttime bombers. The next thing, and I was about 3.5 years old, I remember that. The sound of it you will never forget. And then the next thing that I remember as a child was in 1944, when the Germans had decided to cut off all the food supply to Holland. And so I remember the feeling of hunger. And even now, as around 4 years old, I can still feel the feeling of hunger. And so what we did as kids, with gunny sacks, every morning we would go into railroad yards, pick up anything edible and burnable. And so that's what and the reason that we did as kids, because the Germans would boot us one, and we'd be back the next day. If it were adults, they would shoot them. And so, and then the next thing that I remember, saw far too much that we should not have seen. As the Allied forces, the U.S. and the Canadians in particular, and others landed together in Normandy to free Europe from the invading dictatorship of Adolf Hitler, and landed in Normandy at great cost of lives, the United States and Canada and other countries. And the Canadians made their way to through France, Belgium, and through Holland along the west coast, and pushed the Germans through the west coast at great cost through the north back to Germany. And so we were located 10 or 15 minutes from the German border, and the Germans had nothing left, but they were very spooked easily. A lot of people died, and other people were dragged out of their houses, all in our neighborhoods, already for the number of years, that were then taken to Germany, either in work camps or concentration camps, with all the results that we now know, that I believe 60 million people died during the Second World War. And so that part we saw as kids far too much that we should not have seen. I saw a neighbor and I'm being very descriptive about it because it still is with me today, is that where a neighbor was shot, a bullet through his head, came out by his ear, but it didn't bleed. And I was looking, he was hanging out of the window, and I didn't understand it. And then cars going by with legs hanging on the side of people that had been killed. And then they blew up a bridge in front of our house, and we were laying underneath under the crawl space with pillows on our heads. And so we saw far too much that we should not have seen. So
That to me is
then, April the 12th, 1945, we were liberated by the Canadian Army, and it made such an impression on me that I knew as I grew up I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And so I was going to go when I was 17, and then my parents wouldn't let me. And then so I was then drafted into the Air Force in Holland. And then I won when I was 23 or 24, and I left for Canada. And I wanted to go to Canada and start with nothing. And the reason that I did that actually is academically I was not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. So they said, "What are we going to do with this guy?" And some people said, "Well, send him to the mentally challenged school." They said, "No, we're not going to do that. Let's teach him a trade." So at 12 and a half years old, they got me a job in a furniture factory, and I loved it actually. But then I always kids can be hard on each other, as you well know, and so all the kids that were my friends that went on to college and university, I
Mhm.
became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
Look, it was not looked at then as being something positive,
Mhm.
but it served me well. But I always knew I was just as good, not better than all the others, and I had to prove it to me. So I decided to go to Canada. I took a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and very little money. And I knew I wanted to go to the West Coast, British Columbia, because and I wanted to build a sawmill. And so that's
Oh,
where all
wow.
trees are. And so I flew into Montreal, took the train across Canada, 4 days, 5 nights. My God, that's a long way. And anyway, so when I came in Vancouver, could speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. Went to the immigration department, and fortunately there was a German fellow. I could speak some German. I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to build a sawmill, and he said, "Go to Prince George." That's where I
Mm.
am today, 60 years
Wow.
ago. And so I can still see the Greyhound station here, close by, where I landed. I had my suitcase, 2 books, 3 books, and 2 sets of clothes. I counted my money at least 3 times. Could speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. I had exactly $25.47. Attitude,
Wow.
I was always positive, even in the
Yeah.
difficult time. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. Work ethic, I work harder than anybody. Even now at 84, I always get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. So and yes, I built a sawmill and many many other companies, but it's not about that. But so the interesting part with me is that I still was troubled by a number of things, and part of them is obviously trauma and seeing far too much that we should not have seen that I didn't deal with until I was well into my 50s through counseling. That was one. So that happened, and so they discovered or they suggested that we have a discussion. I and the counselor, with the agreement of my girlfriend then, or my fiance that became my wife, to talk about the inner child. Very emotional, and as you well know, so that was helpful to me. But the other part that I did not have the confidence. And although I already
Mm.
built companies and did all of that kind of stuff, but I was not a very good interacting person. I could communicate with about 2 or 3 people in my company, but outside of that, I was not very good. And then a lot of people said to me, "You should write a book about you have such an interesting story." Now, as you already know, writing books is not easy.
Oh,
And
especially
so
relive that.
and so uh, and so for 20 years I started, stopped, started, and then I knew about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I'm 84 now, in the mid 70s. I said, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I wrote a book, Against All Odds, and it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And it's not about hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is. It's all about the ups and downs that were important. And so that kind of changed my life. And so the other part that changed my life is that I knew I was different, but I didn't know why. I already had that when I was in Holland, and then I had that when I was here. And so something happened where one day I already was here for 32 years. So that was in 1997. I came here in July of 1965. I walked into a store here and I picked up a book in January of 1997. I have the book right here. I'm going to show it to you. And the actual book is here that changed my life. And the book's title is Driven to Distraction.
Wow.
And it was written by Dr. Edward Hollowell, medical doctor, professor.
Ah,
He is a author, has written 18 books, but he is also ADHD and has dyslexia.
yeah.
So
Wow.
do I. And
Yeah.
I found that from this book that when I stand in the store and I went through the book, I wrote in the book in Dutch because I was ashamed of it because it suggested that there was a stigma attached to it. I wrote in the book, January 1997, now I finally know who I am.
Oh,
And so, and at that point, then even as I went through the book, I then at the same time started Googling on it, learning more about it. I came to the conclusion it's a superpower. And it took
hmm
me 5 years before I went to my doc that delivered our two daughters, but also was a personal friend. And by then I was already, in 1997, I was already approaching 62 years old. And so, and the doc said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And we checked out and I do. And so, so the point that I'm making is that with all those years, from the time that I left school, grade 7, failed it for the third time, was told that I was dumb, that didn't have the brains, that I would never amount to anything, and all the other kind of things that go around it. I didn't believe that. My parents didn't believe that, but I had to prove it to me. And in order to do that, I had to start over again with nothing. A little bit on the radical side, but that's what I did. And so if I look back at it now, is that at that point when I picked up the book and I was already 62, for 50 years, between the time that I was 12 and a half years old when I left school and became a laborer till I had the analysis or the diagnosis of ADHD when I was 62, 50 years, I didn't know who I was really, but this book changed my life. And so the other part I was going to quickly mention, you are my podcast number 380, where I'm hosting, and I've done about 200 or 250 where I'm guesting, is that my podcast number 203 is a podcast I did with Dr. Hollowell. Can you
awesome.
can you believe it? And so by then I had concluded that a lot of people said it's maybe 8% of the population ADHD. I believe that much higher than that. And so doing our podcast, he is the expert. I lived it, but so did he. So I'm ADHD and dyslexia. But I suggested to him that, in my opinion, it's probably 20%. He said, "No, John, it's probably more than 25%. I agree with him. And then the other part that he concluded, and I did as well, with all the successful people that I've met, entrepreneurs, business people, and people that have been successful, and interactions that I've had, is that of the successful people, and the operative is successful people, I believe I suggested to Dr. Hollywell that 50% of them are ADHD. Dr. Hollywell said, no, John, 75%. I agree with him. So that changed my life. And
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's totally amazing. I completely agree. I'm gonna take it one little step further. I think ADHD, we have different people, and there's a personality type. I have ADHD too, diagnosed with it. I don't take medication anymore for it, but
I
as
never
I've
did.
learned,
I tried it, but it didn't work for me.
it gave me more anxiety. And I was like, yeah, I worked it straight, but like, it just wasn't for me. So
No.
I've learned other techniques.
Yeah,
I just think that we don't fit in that little box that
exactly.
most people do. And so I think they try to put you in a box, and if you don't fit in the box, they label you as ADHD and you can't pay attention. But we can pay attention. We've paid attention the whole time. We can pay attention to things that capture our interest, capture who we truly are.
No
You
question.
know, I think it's some of those intelligent, brilliant, like you said, professional, like successful people are called ADHD because they don't fit in that box.
That's right.
We're not the labor. We're not the people who go and who we need those people. That absolutely. I mean, I'm not at all criticizing if you're not, but we take it a little step further. And so if we can't stay in the box.
No,
We can't stay in it. There's no
no.
way. So, yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted
Yeah,
to
that's all good.
add that.
I like it. But the other thing I was going to mention to you, because we have so much in common, is that I do presentations, and I did a presentation here a number of months ago, I guess, 100, 150 people or whatever they were, and so on different topics, not necessarily HDD, but I always fit that in somewhere along the line, and then in the presentations that I do, and so I asked the question then, how many of the people have ADHD? And then a number of things go in, who many think they have, and more go up. And by the time I'm done with my presentation, there are a lot of people in the room say, darn, I wish I had it too. Now, the other
Yeah.
part that I wanted to mention, Alicia, that's very important in my case is because I did not feel good of who I was.
Mm,
And I was not a good communicator. And so in 1990, a friend of mine, my ex sister in law actually, suggested I go with her to a group they call Toastmasters.
yeah.
I said, what are they doing there? And they said, well, it's developing communication skills. And I said, okay. So are they going to ask me any questions? No, they're not. You just sit there and watch it. I said, as long as they don't ask me any questions, I'm okay. So I went down there with her, and in the middle of the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us all about it. I said, I'll never go back here. But I did. I stayed there for 10 years, and I went to the highest level in Toastmasters, and I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. That changed my life. And for the people watching us from around the world, Toastmasters are probably, as we speak, there is probably 500,000 people in North America, if not more, that are attending Toastmaster groups. We have a city here, Prince George, about 80,000 people. We probably have 3 or 4 Toastmaster clubs. I'm sure they have it in Tampa or
Oh, yeah.
wherever. Yeah, so they have them all over. And so people ask me about the highest level you can go. Not everybody needs to, but if you feel that need, you can go all the way to become a distinguished Toastmaster. That to me was very, very important to give me that confidence
Yeah.
and unlock that skill set. And so so that part changed my life. And so obviously between the book and then Toastmasters and all the other things coming from the background of seeing far too much that I should not have seen, it then put me into the place that I felt I had to be more open about it, speak about it more. And actually, next Monday, today is Thursday here, and on Monday I do a presentation on ADHD for the province of British of Alberta and Calgary, actually, to the provincial group of ADHD. And I love doing presentations like that. And there is numerous of hundreds of people there. But nothing, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, is as effective in reaching people as podcasting is in the new media. I'm going to show you another book that I wrote, is this one, ADHD Unlocked. And I wrote that, and I'm going to send you copies of all my books. So that is
I
the
would love
one.
to.
And then another one that I did is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And
Yeah.
so many people, I saw some programs on US television and saying that 75% of the people that work in the United States, I believe it's the same in Canada, don't like their jobs. And 70% of the 75% are looking for another job. And I said, it's so important as I make presentations to younger people is find a direction that you like to go in and then develop that and ask questions. If you want to be a truck driver, talk to truck drivers. Say what is involved. Should you own a truck? Should you do this? Or you want to be a builder or a carpenter or any of the things, talk to people that do it, or a doc. They love to talk to you if you're looking at that as a career choice, or a lawyer, or for that matter, an entrepreneur or a business person, so that at least so often I find if I ask young people in particular, so what are you going to do after you finished in university? You say, I don't know, So, well, the rest of your life you're going to spend. And for me, I started working when I was 12 and a half, and I'm 84 now. For 72 and a half years, I've been working. Are you still living the dream, John? I sure am. And that makes the difference. One more book I'm going to show you is this one here. I'm into
I
health
said,
and fitness. Yeah. And
I love it. Love it.
so I'm going to send you copies of these books and I'm going to sign them. So I interrupted you there. So let me see, where can we pick up now? What you're doing now? You're starting to write a book. Talk about that
Mhm.
part a bit, because all of this now, that you and me have a lot of similarities, more than we thought when we started already, is saying that what I love is that I started about 6, 7 years ago, interacting with people and emailing and all of those kind of things, interacting, blogging, more or less. And then I started with a local television organization to interact. And then COVID happened. And then as COVID happened, saying, what do we do now? I had an apartment that as an investment that we are in now, downtown Prince George, and said, maybe we should have the our own studio. And so we did that, and then we started interviewing people locally. I got a couch here and a couch here, and I interview people, and I usually sit on that side, the other person's here. And then we were kind of, with all due respect, we have a lot of interesting people here, but then we said we have to broaden our circle. And so we joined Match,
Yeah.
that opened the globe. And so now, probably, I would say 98% of all the podcasting that we do,
Mhm.
at least 95%, probably maybe even
Yeah.
more than that, are all global. And so it's a media that, in my opinion, is, dare you imagine, you are in Tampa, Florida. I'm sitting in central British Columbia. It feels, Alicia, like I'm sitting here with you
Yeah.
on the couch. And I have interviews as you do, because I know you're a podcaster as well, hosting as well as podcasting, that we interview people from all around the world. And it is amazing how it works, and it's only on its infancy. And we reach millions of people, as you know, and I know that, and not bragging about it, but I have close to 750,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. That usually means the other platforms I probably have 2.5 million there, plus others. It is how powerful this is amazing, and to share the message as you are doing, and for myself, this is the ultimate media. And then in combination, the satisfaction of writing about it,
Yeah.
is very rewarding. And I don't know about you. I'm going to mention one more thing: is that even when I went to school, I was always good at numbers, even in grade 3 and grade 7, and I was not a good reader because I have dyslexia as well as
Right.
ADHD, but I was a good writer. And and obviously that whole system of how we teaching and our teaching systems are not yet adapted to probably 25-30% of the population could well be ADHD or related issues that make them not suitable for what we consider to be our learning system, and it will have to change. So
Yeah. Our learning systems throughout the entire world were created for production. The school systems were created around the 1920s, 30s, whenever the production, the great, when all the industrial revolution, all the stuff started coming in. They were
exactly.
created to be able to teach people how to go into these factories and work, kind of as you did. So now we have come across, and like technology is on a massive expansion. Even since COVID's happened, it's just like huge, massive expansion that it doesn't work. Our brains are not functioning the same way they did as brains did in the 20s and 30s because we have different purposes now. We have such
Exactly.
a large audience. In order in the 20s and 30s to get across a message across, typically you'd write a letter, pick up the phone, wait for all the things to go to, like, you had all the things. Now all we have to do is an instant in an instant. And so our brains have adapted over the time to where we only have attention spans like this. Our
Yeah.
attention spans are so much less than they probably used to be. And the school systems are still set up for the factor production. They're not set up to teach us technology, teach us to be entrepreneurs, which is, you take so much research going behind this. That's where the world's headed.
Yeah.
As entrepreneurs, I mean, you got AI technology taking over. They're not taking over jobs. They're creating more jobs. They're creating more opportunities for people to become entrepreneurs and do what they truly are designed to do as human beings. We're not designed to be in a factory working all day long. We're designed to be innovative, creative, functioning,
And a lot
giving
of
back to society.
Yeah, and a lot of people were afraid of AI and say it should be put back into the bottle. Well, it won't. It is
It's
out
not
now,
going to. Yeah,
and it likely will become affect us even more in a positive way than computers have done, and at least equal to, if not better than, and in combination of. It will change the world,
yeah. It's how we use it,
and
and
that's a
it's we
good
have
thing.
to. It's a good thing. I mean, we need to adapt. We need to evolve. We need to adapt as humans. If we don't, we're stuck stagnant. What happens when we're stagnant? We're not, we're miserable. Things go backwards, as there kind of seem to be sometimes going backwards, in certain ways. And so we have to keep moving forward. We have to keep pushing forward and taking this new technology and using it for the greater good, because I think it's given to us for the greater good.
I
Yeah,
agree.
there's things you can do that are bad with it, but we have to embrace it and be able to adapt with it. It's just where the world is. We have to accept it.
Now, the hour went by far too fast. We need to, at some point, we have to do another interview. We will, though. So I'm mentioning to Scott. So I'm going to send you the books. So tell us about what are you doing now? Do you have a website? Show us stuff that you're doing now. Give us your website so that people can contact you to provide them with issue or things that you are doing now. They benefit from your past.
Yeah. So my website is Alicia Farricielli, first name, last name.com. And so that's where there you can book a free call. Anybody wants to talk about, I do inner child work on a personal level, but also work with businesses for emotional intelligence, to bring in some emotional intelligence techniques for communication and really start to bring businesses into a structure based upon the way that people think and the way people react, to certain communication styles. And so that's a big, huge, like a big passion, I'm really focused on right now, is that I do work with people one on one. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs that are like, oh, I didn't realize that I couldn't get to a certain level or I couldn't get a certain thing is because I need to go back and start to heal my inner child. And so when they get comfortable with that, we start to work through that on one-on-one coaching and some group coaching as well too. So best way is to book a call on my website. Yeah,
And then a lot of it, what you do virtual as well as person to person. But virtual has
100%.
become such a amazing vehicle to
Yeah,
really interact with people and do business with people around the world and counseling.
yeah, that's absolutely what I do. I work with people all over the world. I have Canadian clients, so I've
Yeah.
United States. I have clients on the other coast, like everywhere. So everything I do is virtual. I've had a couple clients that are local here. I've met throughout the time. We'll meet for coffee and have consultations and stuff talk. But most everything is we hop on Google Meets and Zoom and we do it all that way.
So that's where the future is. It's just still very much at the beginning at this point. Actually, what I'm doing, I've been very active as you have, and then the next thing in the next 3 to 4 months, I'm looking at setting up a platform, that allows me to be much more interactive globally, and
Yeah,
on a number of issues that are important to me, and I believe to the rest of the world.
I love
And
it.
and so, but we will do. I will sign the books. I will send them to you. You'll get them next week. This podcast is what time is it now? This podcast will come out this afternoon, so we release it fairly quickly. Yeah, and so yeah, that's it's Thursday today. Yeah, it's Thursday, so it will come out this afternoon. So the other thing for all the people watching us, and if you like what we are doing, or you like conversations like this that we are having, look at Alicia's website or podcasting. Look at information that I have, johnabrink.com, and subscribe to our podcast that we are doing. Share it with others. Like it, make or make comments on it, and because this is the media, and it encourages us, both Alicia and myself, to do more podcasts like this around the world, and having that commitment that we believe will benefit a lot of people from around the globe. Alyssa, it was a privilege and a pleasure to have you on my podcast. Let's make sure we stay in touch. I will send you copies of my book. And then I'm going to mention to Scott to stay in contact with you. And maybe 6 months from now or so, we can do another podcast.
Sounds great. Would love to. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Alyssa.
All right.